But being on the inside of the drug industry, one thing I became keenly aware of, and being a dispensing pharmacist in regular retail too, why I didn't like it in regular retail. People are in their 20s, they're getting one drug. If people are in their 30s, they're on a couple of different drugs. And it just seems like the pile of drugs people are on just increased with each decade of life. Well, this just isn't right. This isn't health and wellness. So going into the drug industry, one of the things I noticed was, wow, the drug industry's reach to convince the consumer of what the mindset is for what we call therapy. It's only drugs. We're not talking about lifestyle management. We're not talking about getting out in the sun, clean water, clean air. We're not talking about, what foods to eat or not eat. It's just, it's drugs. And of course, working dispensing pharmacy, it's like, wow, we're part of that machine. And my MBA thesis, one of the main points that I pulled that I used to present to physicians learning hormone therapy. Why should I use this? I've never heard of this before. The doctors are in the audience say, well, because the perception of what medicine is created by, well, first, guys like me. When I was carrying the bag as a sales representative in the field, okay, the average physician would have 7 to 8 sales rep calls per day. So we knew the best time to make calls early in the morning, because the average sales reps start making calls around 10, after they clean up coffee for an hour. So if you wanted to get in front of a doctor to deliver your message, you had to go. But let's talk about not only that, but the direct-to-consumer advertising. So in my MBA book, I showed a picture. I went to a medical meeting, a doctor's meeting. It was a real fun party. It's called Digestive Diseases Week. And it's really something else. And I'm standing in front of the Prilosec NASCAR. So Prilosec, the proton inhibitor drug that's now available over the counter, to reduce the stomach's production of acid. They actually had 4 cars. So that's a very expensive thing. They have to spend a lot of money on those cars. And NASCAR I think it is the most viewed sport on television. It's the most well-attended sport. So having the Prilosec car, and what the manufacturer, AstraZeneca, did to reach the consumer was spend hundreds of millions of dollars. And I had a slide that showed not only Prilosec, but its successor, a drug Nexium. Now, what you patent in the drug industry is an NME, a new molecular entity. And even though Nexium, made by the same company, was essentially the exact same molecule with one small change compared to Prilosec, it was a new molecular entity. So drugs get about a 20-year patent life. They're not on the market for 20 years because they file for the patent before the drug is launched. But to extend the patent, you can do things like, well, we'll just have a tiny change to this molecule. And that was the drug Nexium. And in the year Nexium was launched, 2003, when I'm working on my MBA, I would say to an audience, whether it's patients or medical practitioners, would you agree that the consumer product Bud Light is a recognizable consumer brand? And of course, people would. In 2003, Budweiser spent $134 million in direct-to-consumer advertising to reach the consumer. But AstraZeneca spent $234 million to reach the consumer when they launched Nexium. And that's the patients that now ask for drugs by name. And I worked on a project 2 years ago that gathered data, and it showed that the amount of time a general practitioner spends with patients now is less than 8 minutes, 7.6 minutes. And we knew back then, when I'm doing my MBA, is that because of direct-to-consumer advertising, great for the drug industry, 65% of the time a patient visited a doctor, they asked for a drug by name. I need this. And 80% of the time they asked for it, they got it. Because that physician has to go to the next appointment. And I've had physicians tell me, look, I have 1, maybe 2 problems I can address for a patient. It's 1 or 2 prescriptions. And if they have more than that, they need to schedule another appointment. And I know that our topic was to be the corruption in big pharma and with health insurance companies, but one of the key points is that this is where it starts. The corruption of medicine and the delivery of care has just gone to this huge model of driving more and more and more drug utilization, which bothered me. And, like you, found that compounding pharmacy, and I'm on another end of the spectrum now, but that's one of the things I wanted to mention on this show.
Well, actually, it ties in a lot to corruption, because when you think about it, so drug companies, they love the fact that health insurance companies don't reimburse doctors very much money. So the only way they can make any kind of income is to see more patients and less time. So drug companies love it because you're right. They want to get a prescription written as fast as possible. And even me being a pharmacist, when you just said that, it really hit home. It's like, wait a minute. The drug companies really do like the idea of a short appointment because the doctor has no time to explain, well, let's see, your gastric issues, your stomach issues, they might be what you're eating. It might be, diet and lifestyle related. Oh no, I don't have time to speak about that. I'll just give you Prilosec because you asked for it. I mean, it makes perfect sense that the drug companies and insurance companies love the collusion that's going on.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And because what practitioner has time to talk about just those couple of things that you mentioned to really dive deep? And I've asked a number of people, say, how many times has a physician in the last 5 or 10 years actually laid their hands on you? How about check for bowel sounds? How about just push pressure on the abdomen? Wow, does that hurt? And they're like, well, they don't do that anymore. And I've talked to some doctors that have broken out of that model. So I don't mean to vilify or disparage all medical practitioners, because there are many that have exited that model, and they're my customers, right?
Yeah.
And they're prescribing to me, and they have a lot of grateful patients. But I had one tell me, say, Robert, I got to be nothing but an expensive box checker. I wouldn't even look at the patient in the eye. I would listen to them. I would type notes in the electronic medical record, just like I'm on your camera now, and say, okay. Well, I'm going to do this. And here's the 2 prescriptions that are for your diagnosis code, and which pharmacy to use. Okay, thanks. So they could just get out of that appointment as quick as possible. But drug utilization goes way up. And that's just where we started when you and I initially talked about our conversation about corruption in big pharma and health insurance companies. That's just the beginning. But you're absolutely right. Driving drug utilization has been a goal of this whole model.